Soldier0 Patch 1.6 is here. We got Anby and an emo Anby, along with Pulchra, who deserve a national holidays to be celebrated by the furries community. Man, I don't remember she's this sassy. And the most jiggly sniper I've ever seen, Trigger. Somehow this silver Soldier Anby changed her name into Soldier0 Anby. I guess it's more edgy that way. And it does sound a lot better than Silver Soldier because the name is just so long. I guess I would just call her Anby 0 because it's easier. So basically Anby 0 is an on-field DPS, but she also works like a support, which she gonna increase the damage of additional attacks, which we don't have any unit with that mechanics in the patch 1.5, and the only two other units that has additional attacks is Pulchra and Trigger. With this whole new mechanics, it could end up just being a niche mechanics for this specific team, or it could be a huge shift of meta, but it's definitely a breeze of fresh air. After I look into these three characters, I think three of them could be put into one team. They could work with each other perfectly fine, especially with this new set, which will increase 15% damage of additional attacks, and it would increase up to 12% crit rate and 12% attack percentage, which is pretty good. It has to be the best set for the additional attacks team, and in the CN side, people has been speculating if you're making a team out of Anby and Trigger, or Pulchra, or even with all of them together in one team. They should be all using this additional attack set to utilize the most out of Anby's buff. So it's kind of inevitable that Anby need another unit with additional attacks capability, and it's downright impossible to utilize the most out of her kit without another additional attackers. So you better plan to pull for Trigger if you're planning to pull for Anby. So Trigger's kit is also pretty simple. She's like Burnice, but instead of providing a normally builds up, she provides stun and stun multiplier without stunning the enemy. As you can see here, 120%, but we can't really confirm that if the number reflects the max levels of triggers. And my speculation, if you're using Trigger outside of Anby, she shouldn't be using the additional attack force set because she's gonna be working more like a dedicated support at that point. But it does seem like a huge chunk of value are coming from her sub DPS. They're basically tying together harder than Astra tying with Aveline. And it's a shame that Trigger doesn't join the Cunning Hair with these levels of synergy. So Pulchra is basically just another Trigger, but an A rank and also a furry. And of course, you kind of want to use this additional attack set on Pulchra when you are playing her with Anby 0 team. The additional attack set also provides this dash attack buff, so a unit like Harumasa would have no problem to use it. And it's also usable on Alan, but I guess we gotta wait for the test result if this set is optimal on Alan. And next we got Burnice and Zhuyuan's rerun. Burnice is the dedicated sub DPS anomaly unit at this point. She's definitely the core of any anomaly team. But if we take a look at this new set that is pointing toward the anomaly unit, and the kit can only be fully utilized by an Ether anomaly unit, and by judging from the full set effects without shadow of a doubt, the new unit is definitely like Burnice, a dedicated sub DPS anomaly unit. So I think pulling for Burnice is not a bad idea because she's extremely versatile when you are making a team, but you could also wait for this new Ether anomaly unit, which I think most of the people would have guessed is this girl with umbrella, but nobody actually know about it. And the next rerun characters is Zhuyuan. I've been seeing her losing relevant over time, but despite of that, she's still a really solid DPS on her niches. When you are playing against an Ether weakness enemy, I can't really recommend people to pull for her unless you have Qingyi and you really like the characters, and not because she's not strong, but it's because she's such an old unit and we could see the power creep happens pretty rapidly. But I also think it's not entirely a bad idea to have Zhuyuan in your roster. So as for the pool value of Anby 0 and Trigger, due to the nature of their synergy, if you pull both of them together, I would rate this 6 out of 5. But if you're pulling them separately, some of their kit are going to lose value. Like Anby wouldn't be able to buff anyone, and Trigger wouldn't be able to get extra damage from Anby. I would rate both of them at 4 out of 5, but it really depends on if you're lacking of DPS or lacking support. So I was planning to pole dancing in bikinis until we reach the 8-minute marks, but I figured that you guys would be more interested with the team comp, and I think the most obvious core would be Anby Trigger and Anby Pulchra, and the best team would probably be this duo with Astra followed with Qingyi, then Caesar. The other really good option would be Nico, Lucy, and Rina. They don't need to have additional abilities on, it's almost useless for them, and as I mentioned before, Anby Trigger and Pulchra could be a really decent team, because Anby could buff Trigger and Pulchra's damage, and the rest of the characters I would just put down there for the sake of possibilities. They may work, they may not work, and the same logic could be applied on the Pulchra team, because as I said before, Pulchra is almost like Trigger, but an A rank and a furry. When you're playing Anby 0, you could pair her with Qingyi, Astra, and Caesar. You could pair any of them and it would be working perfectly fine. And you could also do that with Nico, Lucy, Rina, and Pulchra, which is more of a free-to-play friendly choice. And the other team that got me really excited is pairing Anby 0 with Astra Nico duo, even though they don't really provide the stun capabilities, but the defense shred would be pretty massive. I don't expect this team to be at the top, but I would expect that they would end up pretty high up there. I could see a pretty great synergy between Qingyi and Trigger, and I believe that this team is going to stun the enemy with the speed of lightning. And when you are playing this Trigger Anby team with Astra Caesar, or even with Nico, Lucy, Rina, Pulchra, these characters doesn't really take a lot of on-field time, so the rotation is going to feel smooth. And as for Pulchra, I think Pulchra is criminally underrated in the patch 1.6. She's potentially one of the best A-rank unit up there, along with Lucy and Nico, and she's such a free-to-play friendly unit for how versatile she is to fit in with any types of team. We just talked about how she's like a downgrade version of Trigger, and usually a good A-rank unit would have very little on-field time. For example, like Lucy, all you do is really just swing the bat and then you forget. And Pulchra also has that, and oh boy, we haven't gotten to her faction yet. Her faction has all the best rank A unit. Like Piper is literally the best DPS in A rank. Of course, I mean generally if you have like highly built Billy, then it could be different. And literally the best support since patch 1.0. Lucy. Like, just look at the possibilities that I just listed here. It's insane for how many teams she could fit in. Like, let's say if we put Pulchra and Qingyi together, you could have just slapped any DPS in here and it would work. I don't put Zhuyuan in here because I don't think it would work unless your Zhuyuan is on Woodpecker, because Pulchra wouldn't be able to proc the Ether anomaly. But with other units like Halumasa, Jane Doe, they could work in this team without an issue. You could also put DPS lighter in here, even though Qingyi wouldn't get the additional abilities, but the amount of days this team would have dealt is overkill anyway. And she also enable units like Nekomata, Corinne, and should be working pretty well with Billy, and naturally Evelyn. This team should be able to stun the enemy really quickly and allow Evelyn to do more chain attacks. Now we get to Pulchra Burnice team. She's basically Burnice pet, and that alone could form a really solid anomaly team. You could put Yanagi in here, you could put Jane Doe there. And as for Attacker's team, you could put Infernal Forset on Lighter, on Soldier 11, or even on Halumasa, but I'm not sure if days gonna be enough for the stun window. And for Evelyn, I'm not so sure about this team because she couldn't capitalize on the Infernal Forset, but I would just put her in here as a possibility. I'm not actually recommended. Piper, Corinne, Billy, and Nekomata would also be a really good free-to-play option. And now we move on to Pulchra Lighter team. Alan, Soldier 11, Evelyn could fit in this team just fine. And you got even more options if you're playing Lighter as a DPS. You could capitalize with Infernal Forset with Burnice, and you could do all the buff with any other support. I'm not sure if Kaleda is gonna be good in this case because, come on, triple stunner. And of course, her best in slot is gonna be Anby and Trigger, but we have already discussed about their synergy already. I hope that's gonna be a good food upside before we get into the patch 1.6. And of course, on the tier list here is really to just spitballing the possibilities of the team that I have in my mind, because obviously characters haven't released yet, and I still haven't got a ticket to Content Creator Experience server yet. If I missed anything, just leave a comment down here. Or are there any other interesting team that you want to put out? Like and sub, and see ya guys.